Good
Good
morning.
afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our BBB and Department of Justice cooperative presentation on gift card scams. So we are thrilled to have you guys joining us today. I'm Angie Barnett, BBB, and let me introduce to you our feature presenter, Evelyn. Evelyn, please jump in and introduce yourself.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me this morning, Angie. My name is Evelyn Cussin. I'm an assistant United States attorney in the District of Maryland, and I'm also the Elder Justice Coordinator in Maryland. And I am so appreciative of this opportunity to talk to you a little bit about gift card scams and how to avoid them. Next slide, please.
And I'm Angie Barnett, as I said, Better Business Bureau. And we really want to just sort of talk about, first of all, why we're doing this presentation. We simply know that there is an incredible rise in gift card scams. And that's simply, and Evelyn's going to tell you how it works, what it means. But the bottom line is we want to make sure, and Evelyn keeps saying this over and over, we just want to make sure you know gift cards are for gifts. They're not for scammers. And so how does the scam work? Why do scammers actually use gift cards? What did they do with them once they get them? Isn't this illegal? What can we do to stop it? And those are questions that we hope throughout this brief presentation we'll be able to answer for you. But to kick us off, Evelyn's going to tell you and give you some background about the prevalence of this scam.
Thank you so much, Angie. As Angie said, gift cards are for gifts. They're not for payments. And what we know is that scammers love gift cards, and that's borne out in the numbers. We see in 2017, the number of reported scams or frauds involving gift cards or reloadable cards was about $40 million lost. In 2020, that number jumped more than 3 times to $124 million. And so we know that gift card scams are becoming more and more common, and scammers really want to use gift cards because they don't have the same kind of protections as your debit card, for example, or your credit card. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Next slide, please. In 2020, according to the Federal Trade Commission, gift card scams or frauds where the method of payment was by gift card was the top type of scam. Next slide. And so what we know is that these scams impact people of all ages. Anyone can answer their phone and fall victim to a scam, but it is seniors, people over the age of 70, who are losing much more money. And we can see that in the bar graph. The average loss for victims of scams ages 20 to 29 was $324. And for those over the age of 80, it was $1,300. So we know that seniors are more likely to lose more money. And that's why education and work in this area to educate everyone, and especially seniors, is so important. Next slide.
So let's talk about which cards, when scammers get you on the phone, are they asking you to actually purchase? So first of all, let's look at eBay. That's one of the most popular cards that a scammer will use. And eBay does post on their website. They do give warnings about gift card scams, and they provide examples of the email scammers use. So they are aware, and they are really focused on trying to educate. Amazon, of course, is the next biggest one. Amazon gift cards can only be used at Amazon.com. So think about it. Once the transaction with the scammer has occurred, that scammer is immediately going to go to Amazon's website and begin to make place orders for goods that you paid for if you fall victim of the scam. Apple and iTunes gift cards are really hot items, as well as Target. So now the one thing we've seen, or a small shift, is Apple and has shared with their employees to make sure to tell people that Apple gift cards can only be used in Apple stores. But remember, those, if a scammer is able to get to an Apple store or online to an Apple store, those are big ticket items. And that's really what the scammer is interested in. Why? Because once they purchase goods from eBay, Target, Amazon, Google Play, once they get goods purchased, they can turn around and sell them on the black market. They can turn around and sell them anywhere. So that's how they make their money. They usually have the customers, or we're told they frequently have the customers lined up, and they're ready to make those sales. Next one.
So as Angie mentioned, this is how the scams work. There's different underlying frauds or schemes that fraudsters are using, and we'll talk about some common examples so that you're aware of them and you can avoid them. But these scams usually originate with a phone call. It might be a robocall, a recorded message, or it might be a live person. There is some script or urgency or reason that you need to go out and buy a gift card. The scammer will keep you on the phone during that transaction, have you get card in hand, and then once you read the numbers on the front and scratch off and provide the numbers on the back, the money is essentially gone, and it is very difficult to trace. Next slide. So there are a number of different schemes where scammers might use gift cards, and one you are probably aware of is government imposter scams. This is a scam where the caller pretends to be calling from a government agency. It could be the Internal Revenue Service, and the person claims that you owe an old tax debt and you must pay now. It could be from the Social Security Administration, and the person claims that your Social Security number has been used in a crime, or that you're at risk of losing your Social Security benefits. Next slide. And I want to point out that the scammers are so sophisticated that they are able to make it appear on your caller ID as if the call is coming from this trusted source. So you simply cannot trust your caller ID when you receive a phone call like this. Chances are very, very unlikely that, well, first of all, the IRS will never call. They'll either send something in the mail or they'll come to your home. The Social Security Administration also will never call. The only caveat to that is if you have a question about your benefits and you've submitted a question and you've asked to be called back. So please don't trust your caller ID. Please don't fall victim to these government imposter scams. Next slide. Another very prevalent type, and I think Angie will talk about this as well, is tech support. Here, the caller will call or send a link, have you click on the link, and by virtue of doing that, you lose access to your computer, or it appears that there's a virus on your computer. And then the caller will say, in order to fix this issue, You need to pay, and here's how you can do it with a gift card. Next slide. And so these tech support scams, particularly now and during the pandemic, where our phones and our computers and our iPads or tablets were really the way that we maintained connection with people, we saw that these were really prevalent. And again, the common issue here is payment with a gift card. Next slide. Here are some examples of others. We have grant or loans. We saw as a result of COVID-19 and the various forms of relief that were provided, that the government provided loans. And so scammers used that as an opportunity in order to get this loan or in order to qualify for this grant, you need to pay a fee up front, or you need to pay this application cost up front with a gift card. Another example, a lottery or a sweepstakes. These may originate over the phone. They also can come in the mail. And we see lottery scams, particularly originating from Jamaica. And so the real tell here is that you can't win a lottery that you haven't entered, right? And so again, the caller or the letter claims that you've won, but in order to collect your winnings, you have to pay a fee or pay some taxes upfront with a gift card. And then finally, romance scams. These may originate in a number of ways: online, through social media, where we're meeting with you today, and someone starts a relationship, a friendship, or a romantic relationship, and then as a result of that, asks that you send them money, usually for some personal problem or a personal debt or some other urgent situation that they are reaching out and asking for money. And all of these can be accomplished where the scammer is taking money from the victim with a gift card or a reloadable card. One other that I wanted to mention that's quite new that I hadn't learned about before is a scam involving life insurance. This involves or targets people who've recently had a death in their family. And so these scammers, terribly, this is a terrible thing, preying on people who've experienced a loss and telling them that in order to get the proceeds of a life insurance policy, they need to pay money up front with a reloadable card. It's really, really terrible. Next slide.
Yeah, and then, I'm going to pick up where you left. You've done a great job, Evelyn, of really painting the picture of the psychology of the scammer. I want all our listeners, viewers to really think about what a scam artist does is he quickly gains your confidence. He gives you plausible reasons why you might give money. And it's very, sometimes it's that authoritarian. We were all raised, the IRS calls, you answer, be afraid, pay your taxes. We have that authoritarian figure there, or it pulls at the heartstrings, just like you said, Evelyn. Great job in thinking about romance scams, the grandparent scam. They pull and tug at the heartstring. Also that hope that I could be a lucky winner. So there's emotion, which always clouds our judgment, a sense of urgency, which again clouds our judgment. I need to act now, I need to act fast. There can be fear. The police will come, will take something away from you if you don't do this. So it creates the perfect storm, if you will. And again, I'm going to go back where you started, Evelyn, that seniors tend to lose the most money to these scams. These scams can hit anybody, but they tend to lose the most. It's also because sometimes our senior population is the most isolated. They're home alone. They're the ones that might answer the phone more. They might fall for what you talked about, the spoofing of that phone number. So put the picture together and think about when people say, why did I fall for this? Who are these people and how did they get money from my parents, my grandparents, my aunt, my neighbor, me? It is because of the urgency, the authoritarian, the hope, but it's all wrapped around emotion, and which always clouds our judgment at that emotional time. So, Evelyn, who are these gift card scammers? And you mentioned, you touched on and used an example that some come from a foreign country, but gift scam gangs, and that's really what our law enforcement has shown us, is they actually go into countries and shut down call centers. So these are very elaborate, uh, organized crime, if you will, scammers who set up call centers. So we know that scammers running the prize, the lottery scams, they typically come from Jamaica. Business email compromise, romance fraud, that's typically out of Nigeria. Government imposter, India. Pet scammers frequently come from Cameroon. So we are able to look at all the different countries in which scammers, and think about it, these are countries, they may be third world, impoverished countries. And one of the things we do know is when they create these call centers, the people are doing this work not because they want to rip people off, they're doing it to make a living for their family. So it becomes a very convoluted scam of, or what the FTC refers to as scam gangs. But, that is basically who they are. People always ask, and Evelyn, I bet they ask you all the time, why can't we shut them down? Why can't we stop the robocalling? The thing is you can't legislate your way out of this, because scammers don't care that they're violating a federal regulation or a law. They don't care. They're scam artists, con artists. So they're not the legitimate business person who did something wrong or made a mistake. They really don't have the reverence for the protection systems we have in place. Next slide. And people do ask, is it legal to get payments through cards? And what we do want to let you know is the FTC does have some regulations that forbids payment methods in telemarketing. So you can't, try to telemarket and sell a service legitimately if you're a legitimate business owner, and attempt to sell a service and collect it through gift cards. So there are prohibitions to keep us from doing that. But again, I always come back to the main point, and the main point is scammers don't care about your regulations. It's just not going to be something that that they are concerned with. Next slide.
Those are all really great points, Angie. And I think the real key is that these scams are elaborate. They involve many, many people, the gangs that you mentioned. They often cross state lines, and they often involve, perpetrators in various countries. So it presents a complex situation for law enforcement, and law enforcement is making great strides. You'll see some examples at the end of our presentation in terms of shutting down these overseas call centers. The important thing to remember, though, is that it is ideal to stop this before it starts. If you don't become a victim of this scam, you won't lose money. There won't be money that will have to be clawed back, which can be difficult to do. So that is why the Department of Justice at each U.S. Attorney's Office has an elder justice coordinator. We are charged with doing public education and outreach to educate people and prepare them for these types of scams so that they don't fall victim. And that's why you see at the bottom of this period, elder education. It's so important. And I think that the most important piece of information, if we could distill it down, is to be suspicious.
Yeah.
Right? Be suspicious of your caller ID. Be suspicious of the robocall that you receive. If you have a real concern about an issue with the government, Social Security, things of that nature, you can always look up the number yourself and call back. And then we also have their industry intervention. What are banks doing? What are retailers doing to help people at the point of sale who might be victims of a scam? And then, of course, our wonderful local law enforcement partners who are really the first line of defense when someone has been the victim of these scams. And then, of course, our federal partners, the Department of Justice, the Federal Trade Commission, the Social Security Administration, many others who are working to identify these scams, working to prosecute these criminals, and also working to do education and outreach so that people are aware. Next slide. And so, as Angie mentioned earlier, scammers prey on people. They create urgency. They create an emotional tie, an emotional issue. They say that time is of the essence and that you have to act right now. And so your judgment is clouded. And what we know is that when a third party intervenes, for example, a bank teller, if someone goes to the bank and is trying to wire money, or a store clerk who says, I'm not sure why you need to buy that $500 gift card. What is it you need it for? Those things make a huge difference. In 51% of those cases, more than half, the person didn't go through with it, meaning the victim didn't end up paying the money and losing the money. And what we also know is that when we have these people who are willing to intervene, we can get a better outcome. And when we educate people in the first place so that they're aware of the scam. Oh, I've heard about that Social Security scam. Oh, I know about the IRS calling and that's really bogus. I've heard about these tech support issues. I know that lottery scam isn't real, right? All of that helps people to avoid becoming victims. Next slide. And so one of the points of intervention that we talked about is at the point of sale, because remember, the scammer keeps the person on the phone. They keep them on the phone while they go to the store, while they buy or attempt to buy the gift card. They give them information even about what to say to the cashier who tries to prevent the sale. And so one of the things that Angie and I are working on are educational materials. How can we show people to avoid these scams, where they might buy a gift card or a reloadable card? Next slide. And that would look something like this. The key takeaway is gift cards are for gifts. They're not for payments. If you're buying a gift card to pay someone, stop. It's a scam. You should not use a gift card to pay the Internal Revenue Service or the Social Security Administration or any government agency. The government does not accept payment through gift card. You should not pay for tech support with a gift card. That is a scam. Or to help a family member who's in trouble, to pay a ransom, to avoid arrest or deportation, or to keep your utilities on. That's one we haven't talked about, but there are utility scams where again, the person says you haven't paid your bill or you're entitled to this rebate. You need to pay upfront right away with a gift card. No government agency and no legitimate business will ask you to pay a debt with a gift card. Gift cards are for gifts, not for payments. Next slide. Here are the signs. Angie talked about this earlier a little bit, but here are the things that we know about gift card scams. It's usually a large purchase, more than $100 gift card. The person is talking on the phone. They seem upset or confused, right? Because they have this urgency or this significant need based on the call that they've received from the scammer. They're very sophisticated. They have a script. They know how to hook people. And the person says that the cards are for a payment. And the reason that I think it's so important, and the reason that we included this slide, is you can be on the lookout for these signs. You can educate your loved ones about it. If you see someone like this at a store, you can ask a manager, you can call the police. All of those interventions help victims from losing their money. Next slide. And again, we have cashiers who are trained to ask for identification when people are purchasing certain items. Cashiers are also looking at bills to make sure that they are not counterfeit. So cashiers are doing this kind of gatekeeping function already. And so this is one more thing that we think would potentially be a good idea to prevent these scams. And we know that some retailers are doing this already. Next slide. I touched on this before. Education is so important. We just finished in Maryland Protect Week, which was a partnership, a wonderful partnership of state agencies, federal agencies, law enforcement, nonprofit groups, bringing all of these different groups together to educate the public, to provide resources, to provide training, to provide materials, because the more that you know about all of the different types of scams out there, and it is sad that there are so many, but the more that you know, the more that you can protect yourself, because when people have heard of it, they're much less likely to lose money. And as I said before, particularly with these gift cards, once the money is gone, even if there is a successful prosecution and restitution, which is payment, from the criminal, back to society, it is very difficult to make victims whole. And so part of what we need to do is prevent this from happening in the first place. Next slide. I think that, Angie, we've covered a lot of this advice, and I'll just go over this, very briefly. Do not give the gift card numbers over the phone, or reloadable card numbers over the phone, or in an email to someone that you don't know, because that's the way that they get the money, and that's how they move this so quickly. The next is that a law enforcement officer, a court, a bail bondsman, they do not accept payment with a gift card. That's a tell that it's a scam. We talked about not relying on your ID or your caller ID. You can't do it. Scammers are able to make it appear as if the number is coming from all manner of trusted sources, local phone numbers. Even recently, the U.S. Attorney's Office, that we became aware that scammers were spoofing the main phone number for the U.S. Attorney's Office and telling people that they needed to pay money because their student loan debts were delinquent, or they needed to pay a criminal restitution. We talked about the grandparent scams. If you receive a phone call from someone who says that your loved one, your grandchild, has been kidnapped or has been arrested, hang up, call that person. And more generally, don't provide your personal information over the phone to someone you do not know. If you didn't place the call, do not provide your personal information, your social security number, your Medicare number, any bank account number, your birth date. Just don't provide that information. Next slide. If someone was scammed, you should contact the card issuer, and the FTC has the numbers for those card issuers on the website there. Keep the gift card. Make sure you keep the physical gift card, even though those funds are so difficult to trace. That becomes important evidence. Report it to the police right away. Report it to the Federal Trade Commission. Next slide. If a senior was scammed, someone over the age of 60, use the Department of Justice's National Elder Fraud Hotline. That is staffed 7 days a week by trained individuals who can provide resources and information. They can make referrals, and they can help fill out different reports that may be required by the FBI if it's an internet crime, the Federal Trade Commission. That number is 833-FRAUD-11. That's 833-372-8311. The hours of operation of that hotline are 6 a.m. Eastern Time to 11 p.m. Eastern Time, as I said, 7 days a week. So that's a good resource for all of these issues. Next slide. And here are some examples that I talked about. All of these, it's really incredible, involve call centers, or in the case of Sam Park, a voice over internet provider in India. So all of these calls, either in-person calls or robocalls, are originating from these large, well-operated call centers in India. And so if you, at least in the examples that I've given here, and so if you answer the phone, that is the first step, right? That is the first step to get connected to someone who has a detailed script, who is trying to separate you from your hard-earned money. And so if you answer and you hear, one of these things that just doesn't seem right, one of the things that we've talked about, hang up. Don't worry about being impolite. Don't worry, as Angie said, about not being respectful of authority. Hang up the phone. That is really one of the best things that you can do if you get one of these calls. Next slide. And here is my contact information. If I can be of help or give you resources, or if you have one of these issues to report, my name again is Evelyn Cusson, and I'm so appreciative, Angie, of this opportunity to do this event and to collaborate with you. It has really been my pleasure.
Thank you, Evelyn. We just want to make sure we leave everybody with a couple of quick thoughts. Emotion gets in the way of clear decision making. The best way all of us can help is education, that communication. Stay in touch with any individuals, again, neighbor, family that's isolated. We also want to remember that, now, Evelyn, you're too young to remember this, but a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades ago, scammers got us by mail and phone. But as technology has advanced, as society has changed, even with the pandemic, we see more and more fraud being open to everybody, not just our seniors. And we see fraud and scammers really preying upon anybody through technology, through all the psychology. So BBB does have a tool that's called Scam Tracker. Go to your web browser, simply put in BBB Scam Tracker. The Scam Tracker tool shows real-time crowdsourcing of scams that people report to us. So I think Evelyn hit on great points. We can't legislate our way out of this. It's going to happen. Don't trust the phone, hang up, make sure you're touching base, keep good communications, and report. If this happens to you or somebody, you know, making sure you report to the local police, local law or authority, go to the FTC. And if you got a few moments, we'd love to hear from you through Scam Tracker. So that's our contact information here at Better Business Bureau. And Evelyn, working with you has been such a pleasure. The wealth of knowledge that you brought today, a great resource looking at the big picture of the federal government. I can't thank you enough for being part of our day. And now let me just ask really quick, are there any questions that anybody might have for Evelyn? Are we good to go?
And while we're looking at that, Angie, you bring up a great point about Scam Tracker. There are so many great resources to report these types of scams. And I would encourage people, if they have not, you know, whether they have fallen victim to a scam or not, it is very useful to report it, because local law enforcement and federal law enforcement is looking at this information. They're aggregating this information, and it could become a part of a prosecution. And so one of the ways to report is through the elder fraud hotline that I referenced earlier. Another is at the Department of Justice's website. If you type into your browser Elder Justice Initiative, on that website, there's a simple button that says find help or report abuse. And that can take you through a number of ways to report depending upon the issue that you have. So that's just another resource. Thank you for bringing that up.